First of all, before Secretary Hardy says anything, let me say this. There's awful lot of y'all out there, and I hope y'all don't have any eggs or rocks or anything like that with you, or tomatoes. But nevertheless, thank you for coming. We're always on a quest for knowledge, and I hope we'll all leave this today with more knowledge than we have before we came in here. Anyway, Secretary Hardy, where are you?
I'm right here, Governor.
Okay, go.
Good afternoon, everybody, and on behalf of Governor Justice, welcome to our roundtable discussion about tax reform in West Virginia. The governor, of course, is going to introduce, we have two nationally known tax experts here today, as well as a panel of many West Virginians from many persuasions to talk about how tax reform could affect their lives here in West Virginia. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to the 36th governor of the state of West Virginia, the Honorable Jim Justice.
Well, there's no question it's a special time. A special time in West Virginia when we absolutely can unite together first and foremost as West Virginians, secondarily maybe as Republicans in trying to do something that's unprecedented and hadn't been done since really 1987. And that is really get on a real live pathway of genuinely reducing our state income tax primarily. Now, the Senate's come with a great plan and everything, and we want to, vet and work together with the House. The House was good enough to jump all in on day one almost, and from all that, at the end of the day, what we want to do is just do one thing, and that's simply make things better for the average, everyday working West Virginian and absolutely drive growth to our state. Anybody that's thinking anything else is not thinking about this in the right way. At the end of the day, we absolutely would never in the world want to do something that would be reckless or absolutely put us out too far out in front of our skis. Now, we have two individuals here that have come, and they came voluntarily, and they came really and truly to give us insight and information on things that we frankly may well not know. But Grover Norquist and Stephen Moore are absolutely icons, and we know it. We've seen them over and over and over on television 1,000 times. We've seen of their knowledge. We've read of their knowledge. Absolutely, we are so blessed. It is unbelievable, and I can't frankly believe, and I will promise you to God above, my mom and dad would never believe in a million years that I'd be sitting between these two icons. But with all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to them. I'm going to turn it over to all of our panel here. I hope we're going to learn a lot of stuff, and maybe I'll wrap everything up. But nevertheless, we're blessed with our Senate President, our Speaker of the House, and many, many, many more here. So anyway, we thank y'all. We thank all of you in every way for coming, especially you. Thank you so much. And Grover, lead us.
Sure. Right now in the United States, in the 50 states, is this loud enough? Am I talking? Yeah? Hear me? Okay. In the 50 states, 8 states have no personal income tax. We all know Florida, Tennessee, Texas, those states, and they've had no income tax for some time. There are 11 states with a flat or single rate tax. And then the rest of the states, including West Virginia, have graduated or progressive income taxes. One of the big advantages of getting to zero is that it's very difficult, almost impossible, to go from zero to a higher number. So if you're at zero or going to zero, then businesses that want to invest, young people deciding, do I stay in this state or move someplace else, know that you're either at zero or going to zero, and therefore the income tax coming back is unlikely. Single rate taxes are very helpful because when you want to cut taxes, everybody benefits, and so it's easy to say, here's why we're going to cut taxes. Everybody in the state benefits, got it, we're going to do it. And if some jerk decides to increase taxes, he has to increase everybody's taxes at once. He says, I've got this great idea, you're all paying for it, we're all listening, and very few ideas fit the category of being such a good idea that everybody's willing to pay for them. So getting to a single rate tax is a tremendous step in being tax friendly for investment and people living here, and going to zero is even better. As I look at, there are about 10 states now, and I include West Virginia in this, where the leadership has said, we're going towards zero. And I think that the key thing here is to move as quickly as one can, but there's not much of a difference between 6 years and 7 years. Get it done right, and bring the rates down towards zero to zero over time. And most successful states have done it with triggers, where when revenue comes in above a planned spending level, half of that money or 2/3 of that increase goes straight into reducing the income tax permanently. That is how North Carolina has taken their income tax rate down dramatically over the last 12 years. It is how Arizona, in 1 year, it's supposed to be a 3-year phase down, went from 4.5 to 2.5. Iowa is on a 4-year path from 8.6 down to 3.99. I think somebody there worked for a gas station and decided 3.99 sounded better than 4. But a number of states, and now Kentucky has voted a 10-year phase-down path there. I was just speaking to the Ohio State House members, Republicans in the House, and they're committing to go to a single-rate tax and then to zero in Ohio, which has got Indiana nervous because they have a very low flat-rate tax, but it isn't zero yet, so they've begun a conversation about going to zero. This is a march to zero. There are a number of states doing it. West Virginia can be in the lead, acting this year, and I just urge you to look towards flat rate, look towards zero, and make it clear that that's where you're going over time, so that people making investments, deciding to move here, deciding to stay here, know that that's what's coming. Thank you.
Stephen, please go.
Good afternoon, folks. It's a privilege to be here. Governor, I'm honored to be sitting next to you. I can guarantee you, Governor, that no matter what we say, people will not throw eggs at us. Have you seen the price of eggs lately? I mean, come on. Nobody's going to do that. So my message is very simple. The governor and I and Grover had a good discussion this morning where we talked about this. My message to the governor and my message to all of you on this stage and all of the people here, Governor, go big or go home. Go big or go home. West Virginia is a state that's on I call it a renaissance state. It is a state that's seeing incredible economic improvement in no small part. By the way, I understand you are the most popular Republican governor in the country, which is an amazing feat because we've got a lot of really great Republicans. The action that we're going to see in this country when it comes to reviving economic growth and getting people back on the job and making states like West Virginia great again is not going to come from Washington, D.C. It's not. We're not going to see very much of any good ideas coming out of Washington for the next 2 years. That's why I'm excited about what's happening in states like West Virginia. This is a state that has an incredible upside potential, in my opinion. And there are 3 policies that I do a study every year with a group called ALEC, which represents about 3,000 state legislators around the country. And we look, Governor, at a whole panoply of different kind of policies that states adopt. And we find that 3 have an enormously important impact on how a state does economically. Number 1, is it a right-to-work state? And I understand West Virginia has become a right-to-work state, which is not anti-union. It just says you can't force people to join a state. That's a critical thing because a lot of businesses won't even come to a state if it is not a right-to-work state. Number 2, is it a state that has education freedom? Does it allow parents to send their kids to the best schools possible? You've become a school choice state. Thank you, Governor, for what you did on that. That's enormous stimulus to the families of West Virginia, but also to the economy. And the third one that we find is really critical is that, as Grover just mentioned, there are 9 states right now, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, South Dakota, Nevada, Washington State, that have no income tax. And those states do very well economically. They have growth rates that are about twice the rate of other states. And one of the things I told the governor was, this is a great state. The thing that you need most, remember what I told you, Governor? The thing you need most in this state is people. People and businesses to come to the state. How can you attract people and businesses? If you are able to, I know the governor's proposal is a 50% reduction in the income tax. I fully support that, but Governor, I'm for a 100% reduction in the income tax. I'm in favor of your state eventually getting to zero, because that would be a flashing billboard around the country to entrepreneurs and businesses and to workers that West Virginia is open for business. And so you have so much opportunity right now. You have a big surplus. Don't flounder this. This is a magical moment for the state. I was telling the governor that, don't go for a double, hit a home run, and he said he wants to hit a grand slam. And I love that optimism. I think that's exactly what the state needs. I'm going to stop, but I want to make one other point. And remember, Governor, when you and I talked on the phone on Friday, I told you this story, but I think it's important just for you all to understand how these things work. As you may know, I was an economic advisor to Donald Trump, and I helped with Larry Kudlow and others to help design this tax cut that he put in place in 2000, that passed in December of 2017. We worked like hell to get this thing done. My first meeting with Donald Trump, Larry Kudlow and I came into that meeting, and we suggested that he cut the business tax in the United States from our 35% rate down to 20%, so America could be competitive against other countries like Japan and Germany, and all these other countries had much lower rates than we did. And I remember I told, Larry said to then candidate Donald Trump, we think that you should propose a 20% corporate tax rate for the United States to make America more competitive. And he sat back in his chair. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. And we were confused. And he said, I want a 15% rate. And Larry and I immediately got on the board of that. And to make a long story short, it went through many iterations. The president was very firm on 15% or nothing. In the end of the day, the deal we got with the Congress was a 20% reduction, and Trump was happy to have that, and I'll never forget, he was so excited about it. And I realized that, if you want to understand Donald Trump, you have to understand, what's his book called, The Art of the Deal. And so you need to ask for as much as you possibly can get from the legislature to get a meaningful tax cut on income taxes. Finally, I know that there are other proposals out there, Governor, but I think the bang for the buck in terms of making the great state of West Virginia a powerhouse state, cut the income tax as much as you can. And if you can get to zero, I will hold you on a chair and I'll carry you around the state of West Virginia. I'll be so excited, all right? Can you do that?
Well, we may be able to do that, but I want to see the day that you can hold me on a chair and carry me anywhere. I really do believe that we're all on the same page with one another. From my standpoint, then I'm gonna go back to Secretary Hardy and everything. But from my standpoint, the bigger we do, the lower our personal income tax, the better. But we want to be totally transparent and say, we want to work with the Senate, the House, myself. Absolutely, we want to work to where we get a deal. We get a deal and we get on a pathway of tax reduction, period. That's all there is to it. The Senate's plan had a lot of really good stuff. From the standpoint of doing stuff for our smaller businesses, great. Absolutely, so many different things about it and everything that are really interesting. We want to work with that. I mean, absolutely, we don't want to turn our nose up at anything. But at the end of the day, I know from the bottom of my heart, there's nothing that has the sex appeal that your personal income tax has. We got to get workers here. We got to get young kids in our schools. We absolutely have so many opportunities, and now is our time. Right now is our time. The biggest we can possibly go, the better off we'll be. The safest and biggest we can go, the better off we'll be. Secretary Hardy, if you want to take over from now, here, go.
Thank you, Governor. We've got a number of great panelists up here today representing a cross-segment of West Virginia, and our first speaker is the Speaker of the West Virginia House of Delegates, the Honorable Roger Hanshaw.
Mr. Secretary, Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. President Blair and I just wrapped up today's floor session, so we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to join the panel today. Governor, thank you for hosting us today as a part of the conversation. We agree that it's a historic time in our state, and we're really proud of that. We're proud of the fact that what we have done for the past several years has, in fact, worked. I see a number of my colleagues from the House, a number of the President's colleagues making their way into the room this afternoon after we just adjourned. We are very proud of where we are as a state, and we're very proud of where we have come. And we're happy to be here, and we're excited to pause for just a moment and reflect on how we utilize the surplus that we find ourselves in today to the fullest extent. We're excited about the opportunity to reduce the aggregate tax burden on taxpayers in West Virginia. We absolutely share the belief that what we need here are workers. What we need here are taxpayers. What we need here are consumers and customers to frequent the businesses and send children to the schools and provide a workforce for business development, business recruitment here in our state. We're very excited about the opportunity this year, finally this year, to be able to work together with our colleagues across all 134 legislators this year and enact a plan that brings down the aggregate tax burden on all West Virginians. That's all West Virginians who pay personal income tax. That's the West Virginians who create the job opportunities that our workers fill. It's the opportunity to fully utilize as a resource that nearly $2 billion surplus that we've collectively helped create over the course of the past several years. But what's also important to us is that we make sure that we don't take our foot off the accelerator on economic development, that we don't take our foot off the accelerator in terms of infrastructure investment, in terms of creating the atmosphere here that got us that surplus. We want to be sure that we don't lose focus on how we got here. We got here to a surplus situation, a historic surplus situation, by making prudent decisions, by making sure that we were making investment where we needed to truly make investment rather than just spend dollars. Rather invest those dollars rather than just simply spend them. That's a philosophy that we take very seriously. It's one that we will incorporate into the rest of our session this year as we think about how we get a tax plan finished in this regular session. Governor, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much.
Next is our Speaker, or President of the West Virginia Senate, the Honorable Craig Blair.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Excuse me. I've been suffering a cold, so my voice will go in and out in the process of doing this. So I'll echo the message that the speaker gave, but then there's nobody here than any of us that want to be able to grow our state and make it so that we provide a prosperous environment to where our people will have gainful employment. I'm a lifelong West Virginian, and so I've watched the exodus of businesses. I'm from the Eastern Panhandle. I watched DuPont, Corning, 3M, GM, the list goes on of these companies that left the state. And you know, I know that happens elsewhere in the country, but what we also lost in our state was our youth. Our population has been a flatline population since 1950, maybe even earlier. And the job opportunities, we educate our children, and our best and brightest are our #1 export. And so our job is that to be able to make it so that they have gainful employment in the state of West Virginia. And I believe that that's something that is shared by everybody that's on this stage. Now, it's how do we go about getting there? And I'll hold a book up because the other day in this very auditorium, we had Russ Sobel, who was a professor at WVU, who wrote a book called Unleashing Capitalism. And this book here has been a roadmap since the Republicans took over for us to be able to do the tort legislation, do the things that we need to do to be able to make it so that our citizens can see the same prosperity that most of the rest of the country has seen, and ours to a greater have not. Or they were the winners and losers, where some segments of our population did very well, above average, than others, many others, did not. And that becomes a concern. And the way that you actually lift people for generations is to be able to have good, gainful job employment. And that will make it so that our number one export, our children, are no longer on an exodus out of the state. And that's why, am I supposed to talk about the Senate plan, or am I not supposed to talk
Talk
about?
about anything you want to talk about.
Okay, so, it's, when Russ Sobel was here the other day, he got to ask the question whether it was income tax reduction that would be the most beneficial, whether it was personal property tax, what was it? And he talked about reducing all of them and lowering them down. West Virginia has the best home ownership in the nation. And the reason for that is because of our low real estate property taxes, and that is to a greater degree constitutional. And maybe before I go any further, isn't it wonderful that we're in this audience right now having a conversation about tax reduction? That was not happening before, and here we are working at that. And so I've said in the past that the personal property tax, which failed on the ballot in November, would have had the greatest economic opportunities for being able to create jobs. And if you have these job opportunities, it's sort of a balancing act. Many states, the ones around us, Jobs Ohio, I think everybody's familiar with who they are, they actually are able to recruit businesses in, but they give them incentives to be there. Well, West Virginia is not a very wealthy state. And so what happens is that we can't compete with them over there. So you got to put yourself in a position to being able to compete with these surrounding states. And if you did the personal income tax, a 50% reduction is where, from everything I've read and everything I've seen, is what gives the impact for businesses to want to locate here and helps drive down the cost of buying them in, moving them into the state. Anything below that, you're not getting much bang for a buck until you get to that 50%. And the personal property tax, actually, that we were able to afford to do that one. And let's talk about that for a second, if we may, being able to afford it. The revenue numbers that we've got for this year were just less than $5 million short of having $1 billion with excess revenues and still got 5 months left to go. And when the expectations are to be between 1.6 to $2 billion in excess revenues. We've had a flatline budget due to the governor and the agencies that we deal with in the House of Delegates. We've all worked together very well over the last 4 years to be able to do that. And that flatline budget has provided us, I'm going to round the number off, well, I won't. It's $588 million out of that 1.7 to 2 billion, wherever it ends up being. That's from the flat line, the controlled growth in government, the controlled spending. Now, what you're going to end up seeing at this point in the year, the severance tax collections are almost $500 million. So when I said $1 billion a while ago, above revenue estimates, the severance tax revenues are half of that. Wage inflation and inflation on the commodities that the sales tax is driven the other two. That and the corporate nets, what, by the way, we've lowered down in the past. And we've got more coming in because businesses are more profitable than ever in the state of West Virginia. This has set the stage so that we're wanting to do it. We're wanting to work together. So the Senate put the proposal in place that it was a 15% reduction in the personal income tax with triggers. And anything over 105% on the sales tax collections would trigger the dollar-for-dollar reduction, and that would put us on the path of that. It would also, we used the governor's bill to relieve 100% of the personal property tax on automobiles. And there's a reasoning for doing that also, is the personal income tax doesn't affect seniors to a greater degree because seniors are already, by the work that we've done in this legislature, up to $100,000, they don't have to pay the personal income tax, okay? Now, the working poor don't pay personal income tax either. So they're left out of this equation. So this is when you do 100% in a rebate, in the form of a rebate for the personal property tax on automobiles, then that actually is able to help those. And that's what we want people on the jobs and working. Another aspect of this, we did 50% of that on the personal property tax on equipment, machinery, and inventory. And that's because small businesses pay this, and we didn't apply that rebate to the corporate net because those are C Corps. So you think about the big companies that have all these stockholders that they're not located in West Virginia, their profits go out of the state. This makes it so that we exclude those out. We heard the people, we heard you, Governor, when we were talking about this. So we're trying to make it so that and the job creators, we all know as well, the greater degree, the small businesses are the job creators. And so we're looking at how to thread the needle and being able to make it so that it works for everybody and be successful. Now, there's still money that's left there over in our excess revenues. And just for everybody's information, I'm quite certain you know it, but severance taxes are cyclic. We go from boom to bust, boom to bust, boom to bust in this state. Right now we're booming, but that could drop out at any given point in time, and half of our excess revenues would evaporate for that. The rainy day fund that we have in the state of West Virginia, because of the makeup of the stock market right now, is low. By the time we hit July the 1st of this year, by law, we're going to end up having to do a $200 or $300 million transfer into the rainy day fund. So that comes out of that excess revenue that I was talking about. And that could end up being a good thing or bad thing. Things have been going fairly well in this state, and our reimbursement rate for Medicaid is going to drop, and it's going to end up taking another $125 million for that. There's a potential callback for $350 million plus on education. Now, I don't think that one's going to happen, but it depends on whether we get the pay raises out, whether we move money to the school building authority and these excess revenues to be able to get all these things covered, to be able to get us in line with that. If we don't have that, it gets us in trouble also. Now, there's a road fund transfer and over the last 3 years, if you go and look at the report that comes out each month on this, you'll see that the road fund, and gentlemen, our roads are paid for solely by 4 categories. There's no property taxes, there's no income tax, and only the fuel tax and the transfer of automobiles and sales tax on that. That's how that comes out to be. But we've transferred, with the governor's leadership, here $100 million one year, $120 million the next, and $150 million. If we go this path on a 50% reduction right now, the numbers are out there that will cease. We'll not be able to afford being able to do that. And so there are other things that come into play with this as well. Do I believe a 50% reduction in the personal income tax is a wonderful idea? Absolutely. And but we were also bound by in the past that you could get there pretty quickly if you wanted to increase the sales tax on that. But 58% of our population lives on border counties, and a lot of them have the lower tax on that. Now I'm going to close with one other one on the personal income tax, and that is that to gravitating to it will be helpful, especially if our surrounding states do. But remember, I just spoke about 58% of our people live on the border counties. Many of them work outside the state of West Virginia because the job opportunities are not in West Virginia, and you can see it on the front of this book of where it's got a picture of West Virginia on one side and there's nothing, and on the other side of it, there's prosperity in those states. And what is going to happen if we went to zero, say we wanted to do zero today, we will actually lose our reciprocity agreement. When Grover's paper that he's that he has here, he has all the green states on there. Most of them, with the exception of Alaska, had zero income tax to start with. This is built into their personal or into their property tax base and their whole tax system in general for that. Our surrounding states do not. And if we lose that reciprocity agreement, we will have made it so that the people working in West Virginia will be zero. But they could actually end up paying more taxes than what they currently would have been in the state if the reciprocity agreement goes away. And that reciprocity agreement is real. These other states didn't need it because the other states around them came up that way and they were able to manage accordingly. We're changing the metrics on how that would work on that. And so by phasing it in and having those triggers in the sales tax, we believe in the Senate that it puts it in place in such a way that it's prudent. We don't want to ask for any future governors or legislatures to have to come back. And so we've used that number of $600 million. We know that that's a real number. That's a real number that we can work with and be able to hopefully aggressively recruit more businesses into the state. And the more people that you have in the workforce, the more people paying tax, it will accelerate the reduction of that personal income tax. And that's always been the plan from that standpoint. So I know I talked a long time. There's a lot more to it than that, but I hit the high points because we're taking a holistic approach, at least in the Senate, and we want long-term benefits for all the people of West Virginia to be able to succeed and prosper just about like every other state. And I do have to say one last thing, and that is if we keep our youth here, we have one of the oldest populations there is in the state also, and they don't make children. We finally, with the governor's leadership, finally have more people moving to the state than moving out, but we still have a population decline because of people like myself. Getting older, we're dying off, and there's more people passing than what are being born. But if you're able to keep your youth here with gainful employment instead of going to Charlotte and all over the world, you keep them here, they fall in love, they already love this state, and they'll have children. They'll have children, and you don't have to worry about school closings and school consolidations. It goes the other direction. It's upward mobility for all. And so that's the short version of why we have the position that we have in the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Blair. Our next speaker is one of my favorite business owners, Tom Minturn, who owns the Chick-fil-A here in Charleston, West Virginia. Tom?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to just to be able to share. And I agree with President Blair as far as trying to keep people here. That's one of our goals is when we're getting ready to open our second Chick-fil-A, we have about 250 team members here. And we talk a lot about prosperity, and we do some financial counseling and coaching with them to be able to help them. But to be able to provide this for them would be amazing, be able to cut their income tax at 50% or better. Also, it would be great to be able to get it to zero, but to be able to help them understand that and what that is, what will do for their future. Because we tell them, we do 401k, insurance, profit sharing to be able to provide for them. I came back here from West Virginia about 12 years ago to open a business and be able to provide jobs and opportunities. And we don't just provide jobs, we provide careers. And to be able to add that onto that would be amazing. And then also be able to recruit college graduates to come work with us would be amazing.
Thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
Our next speaker is Joseph Moser. Joseph is the CEO and owner of the Ashbrook Mini Mart in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Thank you for having me. One thing that I want to say is a decrease in income tax, it benefits every single one of us here at this table, out in the audience. I mean, it touches every single one of us. And to have that as a small business owner in West Virginia, born and raised, and to see that with my employees and with my family, I mean, who doesn't want that? I mean, it's gonna be a great thing. And I think also with the surplus, with this $2 billion surplus, and the governor, you have done a fantastic job and with the people around you, and spending that money in a way that's going to benefit us. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is someone that was my daughter's swim coach many, many years ago, Kristen Anderson. Kristen is an accomplished career woman, but also a wife and mother from here in the Kanawha Valley. Kristen?
Yeah, Kristen, y'all pull these closer to you and everything, and if you know, where you guys can talk loud.
Okay, I can talk really loud.
That's good. Do it. Go for it.
Thank you, Secretary Hardy, for having me here today. And yes, I am a wife and mother. I have 4 young children, ages 7, 5, and my twins are 2. My husband Andrew and I have chosen to live in West Virginia. We've both been recruited out of state, but we choose to live here. We love living in West Virginia. But like myself, a lot of working families are feeling the squeeze of rising inflation. We feel it every day at the gas station, at the grocery store. Stephen joked about egg prices, but I am super passionate about egg prices because my 4 children eat a lot of eggs. And when you go to the store and they're $6 for a dozen, you really do feel that. That's money out of your pocket. So I just think it's so fortunate that we're here having this conversation, that West Virginia is in a spot where we get to toss around ideas and decide how we can give money back to people. Put it in their pockets. The only other thing I'll say is that I've lived here almost my entire life. Did a short stint in Cincinnati, but I've seen too many friends and family members choose to leave the state for opportunities. And so I think anything we can do to make this, make our economy competitive, make this a desirable place to live, work, and raise a family. Once people get here, they won't leave.
Thank you very much. Next is Chuck Autry. Chuck's a CPA and is a partner with Autry and Toller in Princeton, West Virginia.
Can you, oh, mine's working, so that makes us feel good. I don't have a whole lot to add. Everybody, Senator Blair unpacked a lot of things that had me, but there was just 3 points that I would bring up. Of course, we are entering our busy season. I think if I polled all my clients and asked them if they would like to have more money in their pocket, I probably would get 100%. It just changed the language and not say tax cut and just say, if you have more money coming in your pocket, are you going to turn it down? There's always that outlier. Mike would shake their head, but I could say that. The second thing that I would bring up, Kristen and I was talking a little bit, I was one of the exports, left and went to the grass is always greener of Charlotte. Spent probably 10 years down there. It's where I cut my teeth and came back. You can have it down there. We have plenty to be here, proud of, and do better. But it was interesting because they had the intangibles tax, and I'm dating myself back in the 90s, and when they got rid of that and started cutting their taxes, you started seeing a lot of growth go down in the Charlotte area. The other thing that I'll bring up is, as a dad, now I have 3 exports in waiting that I want to keep here. So one of the things that I try to educate them on right now, because one of them is looking in the Carolinas, and I keep telling them, look at your cost of living. And personal income taxes is in that. You reduce that, but I think we just got to educate them. We've got a lot to be proud of, and that's about all I have for this.
Thank you. Next is an educator, Dr. Joshua Baker, who's the president of Mount West Community and Technical College in Huntington. Dr. Baker?
Good afternoon. I'll share some comments, some professional, some somewhat personal. Through my career, I've had the opportunity to meet with site selectors and companies considering where they locate. And in all of those meetings, they always care, of course, about taxes, right? What does that structure look like? And it clearly matters. Because I have the microphone, the opportunity, I also have to thank our state, because the second thing they focus on is available workforce and the ability to quickly train individuals to get into those pathways. And as we present Mount West strategies in DC and other states at different conferences, we always have people come and talk to us about the Learn and Earn program, West Virginia Invest HEAPS funding, where so much of our workforce pathways are free or very low cost. And in fact, we're even working on more dual credit pathways. And so I have to thank our state government, governor, legislators for the Senate for those programs. Now, I want to talk to you on a bit of a personal note. So I was out west visiting last summer and talking. I was at a soccer camp. It was an ID camp, as they call it, talking with a parent from California. And I said, I'm from Huntington, West Virginia. And they said, I was on a real estate website last week looking at real estate in West Virginia. I think we're in a very interesting time period where people slightly, or a strong degree because of remote work, but also because of some socio-political issues, that people are looking to move and relocate, and we are on the map. And the package that we put together, which absolutely includes taxes, is a critical element as they decide where they're going to move.
Thank you. Our next speaker is one of my former students. And I might add, in our class that we had, if you remember, we discussed many of Grover Norquist's theories in our class, and you always advocated on his behalf. So, with having said that, Jason Huffman is the president for Americans for Prosperity.
Thank you, Secretary, and thank you, Governor, for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. Grover, big shout out. You got me through grad school. I appreciate that. So, in any event, I think I've talked ad nauseum about this topic for a great many years of being a part of one of the lead policy organizations in the state, aside my friend Garrett. And basically, all the evidence is extremely clear. When you reduce taxes, people come to your state. It's got a lot of common sense to it. I don't think it's surprising for a lot of folks, but it's an outstanding goal that we've had. You know, Stephen Moore said that, and I like that, we're a Renaissance state in West Virginia. I mean, we have passed right to work. We've adopted one of the best education freedom policies in the country. And one of the last things that we have to do, surely, is reduce our income tax significantly. And that's going to bring people to the state. So let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good with this conversation, and hopefully we'll get somewhere this legislative session in short order. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Next is Garrett Ballingy, who's the Executive Director of the Cardinal Institute for West Virginia Policy.
Thank you, Secretary. It's a privilege to be here talking about, frankly, one of my favorite things, which is ideas to make West Virginia a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And perhaps I'm going to speak very briefly. I just want to do some level setting. I think it's important to understand why we're having this conversation in the first place. When a dollar is generated, it has two paths to take, right? It either finds itself in the coffers of federal, state, or local government, or it is kept in the wallet of the individual citizen for them to spend, save, or invest. That's it. That's what happens with the dollar whenever it's generated via economic activity. And the record of history is quite clear, similar to what Jason was just saying. Widespread prosperity, which is what we all want, is most easily created when individual citizens and job creators and entrepreneurs are allowed to invest, spend, and save that money the best way they see fit. And that's fundamentally what this entire conversation is about, is how do we shift the equilibrium from the individual citizen frankly giving more and more of their hard-earned blood, sweat, tears, and money to government versus allowing them to make the best decision for their family's future, for their community's future, and for their business's future. And that's what income tax reform is all about. Just last year in this state, over 12,000 new businesses were created. Imagine how each one of those business owners would do with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars more in their pocket. They would hire workers. They would invest in their workforce. Instead of writing a check to the State Department of Revenue, they would write a check to research and development in their own business. And so that's what this conversation is all about. I would like to say this as well. I think a lot of opponents of tax reform like to say that this is a risky proposition, right? Well, if we take too much away from state government, well, we're going to cut all of these substantial programs, all of these programs that people really rely on. I would suggest this. It's actually riskier if we don't do this. To echo Stephen's comments, we are at the edge of a renaissance, but that we are indeed there at the edge. We have to take the next step. And whether it's a 50% cut, a 100% cut, a 25% cut, we're going to be a little bit closer, and we're going to be a little bit closer to really showing the rest of the country what we've always known. I was born in Parkersburg in 1987. I can remember since I was 5 years old that West Virginia is a state with great potential. The thing about potential is you eventually have to realize it in order for it to mean something. We've got the Hope Scholarship. We've got tort reform. We've got right to work. We've got the repeal of prevailing wage. We've got all of the checks. And now, as Jason said, the very last one, and perhaps the biggest one, is to make sure that we keep more money in the pockets of job creators, entrepreneurs like Tom, the 12,000 new businesses that were registered here this last year, the entire constellation of existing businesses and entrepreneurs. And then I bet you come back here and you revisit this conversation 10 years from now, and people will be amazed at the amount of economic activity that's been generated. Thank you.
Representing small business is Bridget Lambert, speaking on behalf of the West Virginia Business and Industry Council.
And the West Virginia Retailers Association. As you know, I want to thank you for having us here and letting us be a part of this conversation, because our small towns and small businesses drive the communities that we all live in. And the retail segment is the nation's largest private sector employer base that drives the U.S. economy with 52 million jobs. And in West Virginia, retail promotes 26% of the jobs, with over 232,000 employees. And a lot of you think of those employees as the cashier who checks you out and brings you back into the store week after week. It's much more than that. We have some of the largest marketing and promotional companies in the world, some of the best computer programmers in the world, and also the omni and digital channels that our industry is promoting and growing has just driven the home delivery services in this state. So retail is much more than what you think of. And so we do support and commend the governor for all the hard work that he's done, and the legislators. Our legislative leaders have put a lot of time and effort and study into these tax proposals, and we watch these very closely. We do believe West Virginia is better positioned than it's ever been in the history of my life here. I'm a lifelong West Virginian and proud to be here and proud to have a job here and to work with the wonderful people that I do in the state capitol and to be a part of this. And I think we have to tackle these challenges and capitalize on these opportunities as we move forward. We'd love nothing better than see a fair and competitive tax structure put in that does promote the growth of reinvestment in our communities. Give the businesses what they need to hire more employees, reinvest those funds in the development of the small towns in which they are. So I'd like to say thank you all for having us here today. The Business and Industry Council represents the largest and most prominent businesses in West Virginia, and they also encourage you very much so to take this slow, use good common sense, and make sure at the end of the day we come out with a product that grows West Virginia and stabilizes the families that really rely on these businesses every day for their income, the benefits they have in their household, and let them stay here in West Virginia. We don't want to keep losing our young people to better job opportunities out of the state. So thank you for having us here today, and I know that all of you, your heart is in this state as much as our hearts are in this state. If you do it from your heart, you're going to get this tax plan right.
Thank you.
Secretary.
Thank you very
Secretary
much.
Hardy, hold up just one second. President Blair got to go chair a committee or something.
Yeah, I got a chair committee at 1:30,
So he's going to have to run, and then he's going to try to get back before we're done, but he may not be able to because that's a long ways over there.
All right. Next is Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Economic Development, the Honorable Mitch Carmichael.
Well, thank you, Secretary Hardy. Thank you, Governor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a state that's on fire economically. The fact is that we have grown this state in terms of jobs and capital investment over the last year exponentially. From 2017, Mr. Moore, Mr. Grover, Mr. Norquist, from 2017 until 2020, a 4-year period, West Virginia accumulated $6.1 billion in capital investment. In the year 2022, we did $6.3 billion. In a 1-year period, we did more than 4 consecutive years. That speaks to the fact that West Virginia is being recognized nationally, internationally for our great job environment, our great business climate, our great infrastructure, people, transportation networks. Our value proposition to the world is being recognized. In fact, we have people in this audience today that are also considering a location in West Virginia. And we believe the thing that we will be most challenged by is workers to recruit for these jobs. And a low tax rate is like a big flashing welcome to West Virginia sign to these people to come here, to raise their family, to create a better life for their families and the societies in which we live, because a great job provides great health care benefits, it improves our school, it improves our entire society in which we function and live, work, and raise our families. So we are so blessed at this moment in time to have these opportunities before us. The legislature and the governor have provided great leadership to bring us to this point where we can talk about the best way to cut taxes and to put more money in the people's pockets of which we serve. So thank you for this opportunity to be here, and let's celebrate the success that we're having in West Virginia.
Our last speaker is the Secretary of Commerce, the Honorable James Bailey.
Thank you very much, Secretary Hardy. Expanding a little bit on what our Secretary Carmichael just hit on, really amongst the most pressing issues we have in our state today is our workforce development. And the governor and his economic development team, Secretary Carmichael, have clearly just knocked the ball out of the park, just are getting success after success of recruiting new jobs to this state. But we have to fill those jobs. And that's something that was a primary focus in Commerce and Workforce West Virginia, and there's a tremendous amount of work being done through workforce development, education, through our CTCs, through our other educational institutions. There's all that work is going into training the workforce of tomorrow, but we need the workforce of today. And there is not a better way to recruit the workforce of today than to cut our income taxes. And to be able to tell a worker, if we have a job in Wheeling or Weirden, and we can tell a worker in Ohio or Pennsylvania, hey, if you take this job, even if it's for the same amount of money, we're going to give you that's a pay raise. And you'll be able to provide more for your family. You'll be able to contribute to the West Virginia economy instead of the Ohio or Pennsylvania economy. It'd be the greatest tool we could have to expand that workforce and our workforce participation rate, and just provide for overall benefit and health of our economy.
Thank you very much. Governor, I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Well, I think everybody came to hear these guys, and I'm going to turn it back to them, because Grover Norquist coming this far, or Stephen Moore coming this far, we wanted to hear from you. And so you got it back.
I just have one thing. I don't know if any of you have, Grover passed out this chart, and I don't know if you in the audience have seen this. I know all the people up here have this, but it's striking to me, Governor, when you look at this. I mean, I hadn't really noticed it until I looked at all the surrounding states. You don't want to be an income tax sandwich. And that's, if you look at your rate today of 6.5%, there's not another place within 200 miles of West Virginia that has an income tax rate that high, Governor. And in fact, what's so interesting is that so many of these other states, like North Carolina, like South Carolina, Mississippi, others, Virginia, I just met with the governor, Governor Youngkin, and Virginia is going to cut its income tax rate. So one thing I want to just urge upon you all is that just sitting still isn't going to do anything, but you're actually going to fall further behind through inaction. Now, I know you're going to do a tax cut, but I just think that it's striking to me that West Virginia has a higher rate than so many of the other areas around you. One other point. We all agree, I think all of us at this table and everybody in this room agrees what West Virginia needs most is more companies, more workers, and more people to populate this great state. I mean, when Grover and I flew over from Washington, D.C., just flying over this beautiful state. I mean, it is incredibly bountiful in terms of your incredible resources. How do you get more people? How do you get more businesses? There's an old saying, if you tax something, you get less of it, and you tax something less, you get more of it. You want more rich people to start companies here? Lower the taxes on rich people. You want more workers here who can fill the incredible jobs that you were talking about? Lower their taxes. If you want more small businesses, as you were saying, lower their taxes and good things will happen. So I'm just excited about the opportunity, Governor, and go bold. Please get as much done as you can, because this is one of these magic moments, and you've seen this happen in West Virginia, with the school choice that's giving parents more opportunities, with the making West Virginia a right-to-work state. This is a key part to that puzzle, to really making West Virginia a state that is going to attract a huge amount of people. States with low or no income tax have double the population growth that states with high income taxes. So that's my message, and anything I can do to help you in the next few weeks or months to get this to happen, I'm happy to do it.
I mentioned earlier all of the various states that are moving towards zero on income taxes, and so there's going to be increasing competition to get towards zero for the personal income tax, and frankly the corporate income tax as well, which tends to move down with the personal income tax. And of course, people move to states with low income taxes. They invest in states with low income taxes. They particularly invest in states with zero. I want to take a moment here to talk about the politics of it all. This chart explains the last period of American history from 1932 to this yellow line, 1994. That is a 62-year period, where the Republicans had control of the House and the Senate for 4 of 62 years, okay? Congress runs the country. Presidents have scandals and starts war. But Congress runs the country. We had a one-party state in Washington, D.C. for 62 years. In 1994, after George Herbert Walker Bush ran for president promising never to raise taxes, had a very successful presidency, managed the collapse of the Soviet Union, kicked Iraq out of Kuwait without sticking around for 25 years to watch what happened, and one problem, which was a tax increase. In the next year, more than 90% of Republicans running for federal office signed a pledge never to raise taxes, and they've kept it ever since. The modern Republican Party will not raise your taxes. They may invade small countries they can't pronounce, but they will not raise your taxes. And since 1994, the Republicans have controlled Congress, both houses, 60% of the time. Not once out of 15 years or 4 times out of 62 years, but 60% of the time. The same is true with states. Those states, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, that have made themselves states that will Tennessee, that will never raise your taxes. Governor, Senate, House, making that clear, become increasingly red. Those states that think sometimes maybe we raise taxes, Virginia did this, Colorado, Nevada, become blue states, or at worst, at best, purple states. So this is a particularly important political decision as well about keeping, of all the issues that you care about, all the issues that may be in the Republican Party that are important to you that may not be about taxes, maybe the Second Amendment. If you want to protect the progress that has been made in this state to becoming a red state, continuing to make the Republican Party the party will never raise taxes and in fact bring them down, changes the politics of the nation, and it changes the politics of the state. But do it because it's good for the economy.
Well, let me kind of wrap up, okay? First of all, it's difficult to see y'all out there. I can tell you're here, but it's hard to see who you are. I know lots and lots and lots of great friends. And again, I don't know how in the world we thank, Stephen Moore and Grover Norquist enough for coming. They came because they truly see that we're on the threshold of doing something that's unbelievable, unflat believable. And they come because they really care about West Virginia and more so about America. They do. And I know it, and I let off by saying icons. We've seen them over and over and over. And so we can never, ever possibly thank them enough. I thank everybody that's joined us on this panel. But I just wanted to say this last thing. When I don't have long left as your governor. When I walked in the door, the very thing that I saw the most that we needed to do in West Virginia is get on a pathway, like it or not like it, of changing our image, changing who we are in the eyes of a lot of people on the outside that are throwing rocks at West Virginia and wouldn't even consider West Virginia. And so in doing so, we started down that path. We started down that path doing stuff like building roads or tourism exploding or whatever it may be. I say over and over little things like a frog that's not proud of your own pond is not much of a frog. And so with all that, it started to happen, did it not? And today, here we are. All of us, all of you. Here we are at a threshold and an opportunity beyond belief, beyond all comprehension. Now, I'll promise you to God above that man right down there, our Secretary of Revenue, and all the great people in the Revenue Department that have been here forever, they know these numbers up one side and down the other better than any of us tenfold. And without any question, whatever we do is going to be completely safe. Now, you can sit around and worry about a meteorite hitting tomorrow and everything, and if you're that person, then what you need to do is go be with your family, because absolutely that person is not going to go anywhere. Go be with your family if you're worried that tomorrow that a meteorite's coming. Don't stand out here and do work. Now, with all that being said, what I believe with all in me is one thing. The great people of West Virginia pulled this rope for a long time. And without any question, we need to put money first and foremost back in their pockets. With that, absolutely, we have been on a pathway, and you've seen it. You've seen it over and over. Every time we turn around, we announce somebody else coming to West Virginia. Right just a few moments ago, our Secretary of Economic Development and everything came to me and said, there's 3 gentlemen here that absolutely are really, really dialed into the possibility of bringing a business to West Virginia. Will you meet them? You can't absolutely believe the number of opportunities, and it's working. It's working right as we speak. Now, we've got to all work together. I'm a true believer with all in me. We had to have real ideas on the table, and we've got to all continue to work together. Because whether it be the House, or it be the Senate, or it be the governor, at the end of the day, if we'll stay on a pathway and we'll check our feelings or our emotions at the door, and we'll get to work on what's good for you and for all this state, at the end of the day, that's what needs done. With all in me, there's a real chance here to move forward in a great way. But the last thing I'd tell you, and I'll just quit right at this, there is nothing we can do that's going to drive real growth here more than putting money in people's pockets. If we want population in West Virginia, workers in West Virginia, we've got to get competitive and put money in people's pockets. We want to go as big as we can go. We absolutely want to do anything and everything we can to continue to work together. But I always tell you this, and I mean it. I love you, and I love all y'all. and I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Thank you so much for being here, and more than anything, thank y'all. Thank you too.